Hello, YouTube. It is a pleasure to have you with me today. Let's take a headlong plunge into this exchange. I had a very intelligent high school student that is a subscriber call me out. Well, he did not take an antagonistic approach, but made it clear that he wanted feedback. I appreciate this as he wanted me to address responsible movement online and the challenge of real versus virtual. He was gracious enough to allow me to structure my thoughts in a manner which felt best for me. So, these are my current thoughts, warts and all. When non-academic or militaristic application of the internet began, I made an observation, one that did not take long to solidify within my mind. It was the demarcation of virtual reality and the real world. It was the listing of worth based on the value put on each, or the misunderstanding of the potential power within the virtual. This I automatically took as an indication that maybe we are not ready for this technology. Maybe we have not developed enough mentally and emotionally to see that the only division established was that of our own making. Soon I saw commentary not solely manifesting due to one's report of the real world. I saw actions occur on various virtual strata which affected things on the outside of it, and therefore was reported upon. Yet, repeatedly, I saw people relate to the internet as not the real world, even with my observation. If I was too quick to speak, or if my brain power had the speed of the movement likened to molasses in January, I would find myself regurgitating the claim. This is not the real world. Even as I saw people go to chat rooms and hook up with others, only to bring that individual into their life, thus altering that person's path temporarily or permanently, I could hear myself think, this is not the real world, yet acknowledge that this is influencing the real world. That dichotomy that existed within me for a brief spell stimulated a lot of thinking within me. I think we can even say that due to our application of the internet, there appears to have formed an intransigent decay of boundaries. Yet, those who are of flesh and bone, ones who marks vicinity within a region known as real, a designation that is further described due to perceived relative reference location. These residents are needed to fuel the other. This bridge, yet another societal construct, though inspired by technology and possibly the untraveled or gently trekked space within one's mind, could establish, depending upon what you make of its function due to your awareness, could establish what I consider a false separation. Even this contributes to the specialness of the internet. I will bypass the freedom some allow themselves when clutching tightly to their anonymity online, as if being anonymous should release you from your own personal code. Do we need the parent figure of society to maintain pressure upon us so we discriminate rationally between relations? I do not think so, if the person is mature and rejects the position of simpleton. So let's just say we can agree on this much. Then other questions may take shape. One may be motivated to mull over the degree of responsibility one has when communicating on this medium. I have been famous for stating that I do not shoulder the responsibility for that which brews within another due to their interpretation. Boy, did I just sound like a caricature of myself. Anyway, I understand my cognitive content and my listeners' perceptual powers may not jive or be in harmony. Let's remove that as a possibility. Let's assume, for conversation's sake, that what they perceive is exactly what was stated. So, what is the level of accountability present when supposed authoritative institutions or individuals spew disinformation, rhetoric, propaganda, spin, or encourage divisive realities? Can we claim there should be any if no harm is calculated or proven to have occurred? By even asking these questions, are we merely wandering into a morality appraisal? Now, do know that I do not advocate passing the buck. Asking these questions is not an exercise in futility. After all, if we hold others accountable for their actions, we should be willing to be held accountable for ours, if fair play is important to us. Nevertheless, I say the formation of good questions can bring us deeper understanding. So, with this said, what is that objective line that, when crossed, demands we accept accountability? Tell me it is not solely the disruption of rule of law. Once we have established this line, should the responsibility directly be proportional to said incorrectness? What if that lack of conformity to societal expectations is inadvertent? After we ask ourselves these questions, more can present themselves. Like, is the one who demands we take accountability for one's reaction to our content forcing us into a scapegoat position? Responsibility is even more interesting when examining the popular road of how politics is commonly addressed in the real world versus the virtual playground of social networks. Simply having a difference of opinion does not rest well with some. There appears an ever-increasing need for continued contention. Nowadays, if disagreement exists, one does not have a faulty position. The stakes are higher, as a determination is made regarding their worth as a person. They can easily become a bad person. Now, it appears, if it is politics, religion, sex, etc., the conversation appears to be less cerebral and more emotional. An emotional landscape is far from independent of mind. Though there is nothing wrong with emotion, I am more concerned about the lack of balance due to one's surrender to emotion, or, in conjunction, the abandoning of objective reasoning. Yet, even in this place, should we explore the appropriateness of accountability? Before we get to this, do we have to travel elsewhere? Should we acknowledge the role of ego online if engaged in one of these topics? It is likely the conflicted parties will be fueled, not necessarily completely motivated by this action, nevertheless fueled by an audience with a short attention span. So the stigma or the demand of accountability may not be as important. Another common motivation shared on both sides is the need to save face. Yet, in person, where the real world is, people, especially in the Western societies, non-apologetically demand more violent responses with greater intensity. Or should I ask myself, does it appear this way due to the access of physicality? Anyway, we see the conventional forms of media, like newspapers, being put into archaic classification of communicative organisms. We see other communicative organisms, like ourselves, contributing side by side the new mutation, the former shell of a particular media giving way to a new shape, due to the demand to recreate itself, to be marketable. After all, one cannot, should not, release their foothold in the marketplace of ideas. So, we are part of the monster that some of us detest. So, outside of ourselves, if any, who are we responsible to when examining our activity? Well, unfortunately, I do not have that answer. And yet, I think we come to our personal answer only by putting things into proper context as well as asking appropriate questions. I hope that my words have given you a little bit more insight into how I see this. Thanks for listening.